Officer Shane Mitchell had been with the Fairfax County Police Department for 9 years when he walked into a situation that would destroy his career and cost the county $13.8 million, plus ongoing therapy bills for a traumatized child who watched her father handcuffed at her own birthday party. He was 34 years old, experienced enough to recognize the difference between a genuine threat and a neighbor's paranoia, but apparently convinced that his assessment of danger was more reliable than physical evidence, common sense, or the testimony of 15 children and 8 parents. One Saturday afternoon in June, in an affluent suburban cul-de-sac in McLean, Virginia, Mitchell responded to a 911 call about a suspicious person near children. The suspicious person was Dr. Marcus Hayes, a clinical child psychologist with 14 years of experience treating childhood trauma, standing in his own backyard while his daughter's birthday party was in full swing. What Mitchell did next, refusing to verify Hayes' residency, dismissing witness testimony from 8 other parents, and handcuffing Hayes in front of his traumatized 6-year-old daughter and 14 of her screaming friends, would become proof of how racial profiling doesn't just destroy careers and cost millions. Sometimes, it creates the exact trauma the victim spent his entire career preventing. A black man in his early 40s, Dr. Marcus Hayes, was standing in his backyard in khaki shorts and a Nationals t-shirt, adjusting a bounce house that had started to deflate. His house keys were clipped to his belt loop. A happy 6th birthday Zoe banner hung behind him on the fence. No crime, no violation, no threat. Just a father making sure the bounce house stayed inflated so 15 first graders could keep jumping. But Officer Mitchell saw him through a filter so distorted by assumptions about who belongs in $1.2 million homes in McLean that he couldn't process a black man as a legitimate homeowner hosting his daughter's birthday party. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. The Hayes residence sits at 1847 Brookside Court in McLean, Virginia, one of the wealthiest zip codes in America. It's a tree-lined cul-de-sac where every house is valued above $1 million, where manicured lawns meet brick colonials, and where neighbors pride themselves on low crime and high property values. The Hayes' home is a 4-bedroom colonial with white columns, black shutters, and a landscaped front yard that won the Neighborhood Association's Yard of the Month award twice. It was 2:38 p.m. on a Saturday in mid-June. Temperature in the low 80s. Perfect party weather. The Hayes' backyard was packed with activity. A bright pink and purple bounce house dominated the left side of the yard. Balloons tied to the fence posts swayed in the light breeze. A folding table covered with a princess-themed tablecloth held juice boxes, fruit trays, and a stack of paper plates. 15 6-year-olds, most still in their school uniforms from that morning's soccer game, ran around the yard in organized chaos. 8 other parents sat in lawn chairs along the deck, coffee cups in hand, watching their kids play and chatting about summer camps and swim lessons. The kind of suburban Saturday afternoon where the biggest concern is usually whether someone remembered to bring sunscreen. Dr. Marcus Hayes had been awake since 5:30 a.m., setting everything up. He'd inflated the bounce house, hung the decorations, arranged the chairs, and triple-checked that every kid's parent had his cell number in case of emergency. His wife, Dr. Simone Hayes, a pediatric surgeon at Innova Fairfax Hospital, was inside the house icing the custom-made unicorn cake they'd ordered 3 weeks ago. Their daughter Zoe had been counting down to this day for months. First grade had been hard. New school, new friends, the pressure of being one of only 3 black students in her class. This party was supposed to be perfect, safe, joyful, a celebration. That's the world Officer Shane Mitchell walked into at 2:41 p.m. Dr. Marcus Hayes had been a clinical child psychologist at the Child Development Institute in Washington, D.C. for 14 years. 14 years specializing in childhood trauma, particularly the psychological impact of violence, parental separation, and systemic racism on developing minds. He'd worked with children who'd witnessed domestic violence, kids separated from parents by immigration enforcement, and teenagers processing police brutality they'd witnessed firsthand. He'd published 11 peer-reviewed articles on trauma-informed care for children of color. His colleagues at CDI called him brilliant. His patients' parents called him a lifesaver. Hayes ran the Institute's Resilience Program, a specialized therapy track for children exposed to traumatic events. He developed protocols now used in 23 clinics nationwide. He trained other psychologists in recognizing secondary trauma in children who seemed fine but were silently struggling. He testified as an expert witness in custody cases where judges needed to understand how parental conflict was damaging children. His expertise was childhood trauma. He knew exactly how a single terrifying experience could reshape a child's sense of safety for years. Hayes had graduated summa cum laude from Howard University with a BA in psychology, then earned his PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Pennsylvania, where he'd completed his dissertation on racial trauma in early childhood development. He'd completed his clinical internship at Children's National Hospital in D.C., then his postdoctoral fellowship at Yale's Child Study Center, where he'd studied under some of the nation's leading trauma researchers. He'd been published in the Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry, Child Development, and Clinical Psychology Review. At 42, he was board certified by the American Board of Professional Psychology, served on the Ethics Committee for the American Psychological Association, and was frequently invited to speak at national conferences on childhood trauma. Just 2 months before Zoe's birthday party, he'd presented his research on police encounters and childhood anxiety at the National Institute of Mental Health's annual symposium. Marcus and Simone Hayes had been married for 12 years. Both high achievers, both dedicated to healing, both deeply aware of what it meant to raise a black child in America. They'd moved to McLean 5 years ago, specifically for the schools, the safety, and the chance to give Zoe the kind of childhood neither of them had growing up. Marcus had grown up in Southeast D.C., the son of a public school teacher and a metro bus driver. He'd worked 2 jobs through college and lived on ramen noodles through graduate school. This house, this neighborhood, this life, he'd earned every bit of it. Zoe was their only child, born after 3 miscarriages and 2 years of fertility treatments. She was bright, sensitive, and anxious in the way many gifted children are. Marcus knew the signs, the nail-biting, the nightmares about monsters, the questions about whether bad things could happen even in safe places. He'd been gently working with her, teaching her coping strategies, helping her build resilience. Her 6th birthday party was supposed to be a milestone, a celebration of her bravery in making new friends, in trying new things, in learning that the world could be good. That Saturday, Marcus Hayes had planned everything down to the minute. Party from 2 to 4:30 p.m., cake at 3:15, presents at 4 u. He'd sent out invitations to Zoe's entire first-grade class 6 weeks in advance. 14 kids had RSVP'd yes. Their parents had all received detailed emails with his and Simone's phone numbers, the address, parking instructions, and allergy information for every child attending. He'd been in the backyard since 6 a.m., setting up. The bounce house rental company had delivered at 7:30. He'd spent an hour anchoring it properly, testing it, making sure it was safe. By 1:45 p.m., everything was ready. Simone was inside putting the final touches on the cake. Zoe was upstairs getting dressed in her birthday outfit, a purple dress she'd picked out herself, complete with sparkly shoes. The first guests arrived at 2:05. By 2:30, all 15 kids were there, along with 8 parents who'd chosen to stay and supervise. Marcus knew most of them from school, drop-off and pick-up. The Robinsons from 3 houses down, the Chens from across the street, the Kowalskis from the corner lot, all friendly, all familiar. At 2:35, Marcus noticed the bounce house losing air slightly. One of the kids must have pulled the plug partially loose. He walked over, bent down, and adjusted the connection. Within 30 seconds, the bounce house was back to full inflation. He stood up, checked his watch. 3:15 was coming up fast. Time to start thinking about gathering the kids for cake, and that's when he noticed the patrol car pulling into his driveway. But to one person watching from across the street, Marcus Hayes' presence in that backyard was suspicious, and that person had already called 911. Officer Shane Mitchell was 34 years old. He'd been a patrol officer with the Fairfax County Police Department for 9 years. He was experienced, well-trained, and according to his supervisors, sometimes overly cautious about child safety to the point of seeing threats where none existed. His evaluations described him as vigilant, but occasionally lacking in community engagement skills. What they didn't say outright was that Mitchell had a pattern of stopping black men in affluent neighborhoods and demanding proof they belonged there. In 9 years, Mitchell had compiled a record that should have ended his career years earlier. 17 complaints. 17? 12 of them involved allegations of racial profiling, excessive force, or unlawful detention of black residents in predominantly white neighborhoods. 5 had been sustained, resulting in written reprimands, mandatory bias training, and 1 3-day suspension. The other 12 had been closed as unfounded or unsubstantiated despite witness statements and internal inconsistencies in Mitchell's reports. Mitchell had a clear pattern. He responded to calls about suspicious persons in wealthy neighborhoods and immediately assumed black residents were the suspects, even when presented with contradictory evidence. In 2018, Mitchell detained a black man for 40 minutes outside his own home in Vienna, demanding proof of residency even after the man showed his driver's license with the matching address. The man was a federal judge. Complaint sustained. Mandatory training. In 2019, Mitchell stopped a black teenager walking home from the library in Great Falls, insisting he was trespassing in the neighborhood. The teenager lived there. His father was a partner at a DC law firm. Complaint sustained. Written reprimand. In 2021, Mitchell questioned a black woman jogging in her own subdivision in Reston, accusing her of casing homes for burglary. She was a cardiologist at Reston Hospital. Complaint sustained. 3-day suspension. In 2022, Mitchell handcuffed a black man loading groceries into his car at a Whole Foods, claiming he matched a description of a shoplifter. The man was a software engineer at Amazon. No shoplifting had occurred. Complaint sustained. 2nd written reprimand. The pattern was undeniable. The documentation was extensive, but somehow, Mitchell remained on active patrol. His supervisors noted he needed to improve community relations, but those notes never translated into removal from duty or assignment to non-patrol work. At 2:37 p.m. that Saturday, Mitchell was on patrol in Sector 7, covering McLean and the surrounding affluent neighborhoods. Dispatch came over the radio with a Priority 2 call. Suspicious person near children, 1847 Brookside Court. The call had come from Eleanor Pritchard, age 71, who lived directly across the street from the Hayes family. Pritchard had been watching from her living room window as the party got underway. She'd seen Marcus Hayes setting up the party since early morning, but in her mind, something didn't add up. She didn't recognize him as the homeowner. She'd seen Simone Hayes plenty of times. Simone was a surgeon, clearly successful, and Pritchard had always assumed the house belonged to her family, maybe her parents. But this black man in the backyard with all those children? That seemed wrong. When Pritchard called 911, her voice was shaky but insistent. "There's a black man in my neighbor's backyard, and he's been there all morning around all these children. I've never seen him before. I don't think he belongs there. He keeps going near the kids." The dispatcher asked standard questions. Is he threatening anyone? Has he approached the children in an aggressive way? Pritchard hesitated. Well, no, but he's around them, and I don't think the homeowner knows he's there. Ma'am, do you know if there's a party or gathering happening? Yes, there are children everywhere, but I've never seen this man before. I'm concerned. The call was logged. Mitchell responded. Mitchell arrived at 1847 Brookside Court at 2:41 p.m. He parked his patrol car in the driveway, right behind Simone Hayes' BMW, and walked around the side of the house toward the backyard. His mind had already constructed the narrative: suspicious male, unfamiliar to neighbors, around children, possible predator or trespasser. He walked into the backyard and immediately scanned the scene. Bounce house, decorations, kids playing, parents sitting. His eyes landed on Marcus Hayes, who was standing near the bounce house, adjusting a connection. A black man in casual clothes, bent over near a structure full of children. In Mitchell's mind, that confirmed the complaint. He walked directly toward Hayes. Do you think officers should face automatic termination after 5 sustained complaints involving racial profiling? Drop your answer below. Marcus Hayes was checking the bounce house anchor straps when he became aware of someone approaching from his left. He looked up and saw a police officer in full uniform, hand resting on his duty belt, walking toward him with purpose. Step away from the children. Hayes blinked, confused. He straightened up and glanced around. Kids were everywhere, jumping in the bounce house, running across the lawn, clustered around the snack table. Excuse me? Step away from the children now. Hayes's heart rate spiked. He recognized the tone immediately. Not a question, not a request, a command. He looked toward the deck where the other parents were sitting. Several had stopped talking and were watching. Officer, I think there's been a misunderstanding. These are my neighbor's kids. My daughter is having her birthday party. Sir, we received a call about a suspicious man approaching children in this yard. Suspicious? This is my house. I've been setting up this party since 6 a.m. My daughter, she's right over there, the one in the purple dress with the birthday hat. Hayes pointed to Zoe, who was laughing in the bounce house with two of her friends. The caller said an unfamiliar black male was watching children and wouldn't leave when asked. Hayes felt his stomach drop. Unfamiliar black male. Nobody had asked him to leave. Nobody had said a word to him all morning except friendly hellos and compliments on the party setup. Nobody asked me to leave. I live here. This is my daughter's 6th birthday party. Do you have ID proving you live here? Yes, it's inside the house. Let me go get it. Stay where you are. Put your hands where I can see them. The backyard had started to go quiet. Parents were standing now, pulling out phones. Kids had stopped playing, sensing something was wrong. Officer, my ID is in my wallet on the kitchen counter. My wife is inside. Her name is Dr. Simone Hayes. She's a pediatric surgeon at Innova Fairfax. We've lived here 5 years. Let me go get my wallet, or I can have my wife bring it out. I said stay where you are. This is my house. These are my daughter's friends. Look around. Do you see anyone who looks concerned? Do you see any kids who are scared of me? There are 8 other parents right there. Ask them. One of the parents, David Robinson, called out from the deck. Officer, Dr. Hayes lives here. We're neighbors. This is his daughter's birthday party. Another parent, Lisa Chen, added, We've all been here for 30 minutes. Everything's fine. This is just a kid's party. Mitchell barely glanced at them. His expression hardened. Sir, turn around and place your hands behind your back. Hayes felt his pulse pounding in his ears. He knew what was happening. He'd studied this phenomenon for years, had written about it, had counseled children traumatized by exactly this scenario. And now it was happening to him. Officer, my daughter is 6 years old. This is her birthday. There are 15 kids watching this. Can we please do this somewhere else? Can we step inside and verify who I am without traumatizing these children? I gave you a lawful order. Turn around now. This is where bias becomes impenetrable. Officer Mitchell had responded to a call about a black man around children. When he arrived, he saw a black man around children. In his mind, that confirmed the complaint. Every piece of evidence after that, the birthday party, the decorations, the testimony from 8 white parents confirming Hayes lived there, was filtered through his initial assumption. He wasn't looking at a father hosting his daughter's party. He was looking at a suspect refusing to comply. Hayes looked toward the deck again. All 8 parents were standing now. Phones were out. Simone had come outside, still holding the icing spatula, her face frozen in confusion and growing horror. Marcus, what's happening? Hayes kept his voice steady, loud enough for everyone to hear. This officer thinks I don't belong here. He wants to arrest me. Simone moved toward them, but Mitchell put his hand up. Ma'am, stay back. I'm his wife. This is our house. What is going on? Mitchell ignored her. He stepped closer to Hayes, hand moving to his handcuffs. Turn around now, or I will turn you around. Hayes's mind raced through his options. He could continue to assert his rights and risk this escalating to violence. In front of his daughter, in front of 15 children who would carry this memory forever. Or he could comply, document everything, and deal with the consequences later. He was a psychologist. He knew what resisting would do to these kids. He chose documentation over resistance. I'm complying under protest. Everyone here, parents, neighbors, all of you, please record this. I am Dr. Marcus Hayes. I am a clinical child psychologist. This is my house. This officer is arresting me at my daughter's 6th birthday party for hosting a party in my own backyard. Please make sure this is documented. Several parents were already recording. David Robinson had his phone out. Lisa Chen was filming from the deck. Another parent, whose name Hayes couldn't remember in the chaos, was calling someone, possibly 911, to report what was happening. Hayes turned around slowly, placing his hands behind his back. He heard Zoe's voice before he saw her. "Daddy?" He looked over his shoulder. Zoe had climbed out of the bounce house and was standing at the edge of the yard, her purple birthday dress wrinkled, her face confused. "It's okay, baby. Daddy's okay." Mitchell grabbed Hayes' arms and yanked them behind his back with unnecessary force. Hayes winced but said nothing. The metal handcuffs clicked into place, tight enough to bite into his wrists immediately. "You're under arrest for trespassing and failing to comply with a lawful order." I didn't fail to comply. Everyone here watched me comply. "And I'm not trespassing. This is my house." "Daddy, why is the police hurting you?" Zoe's voice was rising, panic creeping in. Several of her friends had gathered around her, wide-eyed and silent. One little girl started crying. Simone rushed toward Zoe, scooping her up. "It's okay, sweetie. There's been a mistake. Daddy's fine." But Zoe was screaming now, full volume, 6-year-old terror. "Let go of my daddy. He didn't do anything. Let him go." The other parents moved toward their own children, some trying to distract them, others filming. Everyone stunned into surreal witness mode. This wasn't supposed to happen in McLean. This wasn't supposed to happen at a birthday party. This wasn't supposed to happen at all. Mitchell walked Hayes toward the side yard, still handcuffed, past the birthday banner, past the balloons, past 15 children who would never forget what they saw. Should officers be required to verify homeowner status with multiple sources before making arrests at private residences? Let me know what you think. Sergeant Linda Ortega arrived within 8 minutes. She was a 19-year veteran who'd seen plenty of officer mistakes. Bad traffic stops, unnecessary escalations, paperwork errors, but rarely something this catastrophic. She'd been monitoring the radio traffic when she heard Mitchell call in the arrest. Something about his tone, the location, and the vague description of the offense made her decide to respond herself. She pulled up to 1847 Brookside Court at 2:49 p.m. and immediately saw the problem. A patrol car blocking the driveway of an obviously expensive home, children crying in the backyard, multiple adults with phones out, and Mitchell walking a handcuffed black man in casual clothes toward the patrol car. She got out and approached quickly. "Mitchell, what do you have?" "Trespassing." Suspicious person around children, refused to comply. Ortega looked at Hayes, then at the backyard. Birthday decorations, bounce house, cake table. Trespassing at what looks like a children's birthday party? Before Mitchell could respond, Simone Hayes came around the side of the house, still carrying Zoe, who was sobbing into her mother's shoulder. "Sergeant, I'm Dr. Simone Hayes. This is my husband, Dr. Marcus Hayes. We live here. This is our daughter's birthday party. Your officer arrested my husband in our own backyard in front of 15 children." Ortega's face went carefully neutral. "Ma'am, do you have identification?" "Of course. It's inside. Please bring it out." Simone went inside and returned 30 seconds later with 2 driver's licenses, hers and Marcus's, both showing 1847 Brookside Court. She also had a recent utility bill, the mortgage statement, and the deed to the house. Ortega examined each document carefully. The licenses were current. The addresses matched. The utility bill showed automatic payment from a joint account. The mortgage was in both names. The deed, recorded 5 years ago, listed Marcus A. Hayes and Simone L. Hayes as owners. She turned to Mitchell. "Did you check identification before making this arrest?" He claimed it was inside. "I ordered him to stay where he was. He was refusing to comply." Simone's voice cut in, sharp and controlled. "He wasn't refusing. He offered to get his ID. You told him not to move. He complied with every single order you gave. 8 of our neighbors witnessed it. All of them will testify. Ortega looked at Mitchell with something cold and final in her expression. Uncuff him. Now. Mitchell unlocked the handcuffs. Hayes rubbed his wrists. Deep red marks were visible where the metal had dug into his skin. Ortega turned back to Mitchell. Badge and weapon. Administrative leave effective immediately. Sergeant, I responded to a 911 call. You arrested a homeowner at his daughter's birthday party after he showed willingness to provide ID. You ignored testimony from multiple witnesses. You proceeded with an arrest without probable cause. Give me your badge. Mitchell's face went pale. His hands shook slightly as he unclipped his badge from his belt and handed it over, followed by his service weapon. For the first time, he seemed to understand the magnitude of what he'd done. Ortega turned to Hayes and Simone. Dr. Hayes, on behalf of the Fairfax County Police Department, I sincerely apologize. This is inexcusable. We will conduct a full investigation, and I can assure you there will be consequences. Hayes's voice was steady, but his eyes were on Zoe, who was still crying in Simone's arms. Sergeant, consequences don't undo trauma. My daughter just watched her father get handcuffed at her 6th birthday party. I'm a child psychologist. I specialize in treating childhood trauma. I know exactly what this does to developing minds. I know exactly how long it takes to recover from witnessing something like this. And I know that no apology from the department will change the fact that my daughter will remember this day not as her birthday, but as the day the police hurt her daddy. He paused. We'll be filing a formal complaint. We'll be pursuing legal action. And we'll be demanding that Officer Mitchell never wears a badge again. Ortega nodded. That's your right. And I don't blame you. Should officers face automatic termination after wrongful arrests at private residences? Drop your answer. Within 3 hours, the videos had exploded across social media. Multiple angles from different parents' phones. Marcus Hayes asking to get his ID. 8 parents confirming he lived there. Mitchell ignoring them. Hayes complying completely. The handcuffs, Zoe screaming. Child psychologist arrested at daughter's 6th birthday party in own backyard black. Homeowner handcuffed while hosting. Children's party in McLean. Let go of my daddy. 6-year-old watches. Father arrested for hosting own birthday party. The outrage was immediate and intense. The American Psychological Association issued a statement condemning the arrest and noting the cruel irony of traumatizing a trauma expert's child. The NAACP called for immediate termination. Civil rights organizations demanded federal intervention. Local news stations ran the story for 5 straight days. Officer Shane Mitchell's career imploded within 48 hours. Administrative leave turned into a formal internal investigation within 72 hours. The department's findings were swift and damning. Mitchell had violated department policy on de-escalation, failed to verify residency despite multiple opportunities, ignored witness testimony, and proceeded with an arrest lacking probable cause. Mitchell released a brief statement through his attorney. I responded to a 911 call and made a judgment error. I regret the distress caused to the Hayes family. The Fairfax County Police Department released their own statement distancing themselves from Mitchell's actions and announcing policy reviews. Marcus and Simone Hayes contacted civil rights attorneys within 24 hours. The lawsuit, filed 3 weeks later, named Officer Shane Mitchell, Sergeant Linda Ortega for supervisory failure despite previous complaints, Eleanor Pritchard for making a racially motivated false police report, and Fairfax County Police Department for failure to discipline and remove an officer with 17 complaints. The claims were extensive: unlawful arrest without probable cause, false imprisonment and detention violation of federal civil rights, under 42 U.S.C., Par of 1983, racial profiling and discriminatory policing, excessive use of force, tight handcuffs, unnecessary physical contact, intentional infliction of emotional distress on both Dr. Hayes and his minor daughter, negligent infliction of emotional distress, failure to train and supervise officers with documented patterns of discriminatory conduct, violation of Fourth Amendment rights. The complaint included Mitchell's complete complaint history, 17 complaints over 9 years, 5 sustained, all involving racial profiling of black residents in affluent neighborhoods. The pattern was undeniable. All documented, all dismissed with training that never changed behavior. Fairfax County's attorneys reviewed the evidence and reached an inevitable conclusion. Indefensible. The videos were everywhere. 8 witnesses confirmed Hayes' version of events. Mitchell's complaint history was damning. Hayes' credentials as a childhood trauma expert made the psychological damage to Zoe provable and quantifiable. The optics were catastrophic. The county settled 14 months later. $13.8 million paid to the Hayes family, including $3.2 million specifically designated for Zoe's ongoing therapy and mental health treatment. Additional terms required Fairfax County to implement immediate policy changes. Automatic termination for officers with 5 or more sustained complaints, mandatory credential and residency verification before any arrest at a private residence, and real-time body camera review for all arrests involving children as witnesses. Eleanor Pritchard, the neighbor who'd called 911, settled separately for $425,000 after her deposition revealed she'd never spoken to Marcus Hayes in 5 years of living across the street, had never seen him interact with his daughter, and had called 911 because he didn't look like he belonged in this neighborhood. Officer Shane Mitchell was terminated 6 weeks after the incident. The termination letter was final and comprehensive. Officer Mitchell arrested a homeowner without probable cause, refused to verify residency despite multiple offers of documentation, ignored testimony from 8 witnesses, and proceeded with an arrest in full view of 15 children, including the homeowner's 6-year-old daughter. Despite 17 prior complaints over 9 years, 5 of which were sustained and involved identical patterns of racial profiling, Officer Mitchell demonstrated no improvement in judgment or community engagement. His employment is terminated effective immediately. He is permanently barred from reapplication. Mitchell's name was entered into the National Decertification Index. His law enforcement career ended at age 34. His police union initially fought the termination, but withdrew their appeal after reviewing the video evidence and the settlement amount. Mitchell has not spoken publicly since his termination. Dr. Marcus Hayes testified before the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors 4 months after the incident. His testimony was powerful, measured, and devastated the room. I'm Dr. Marcus Hayes. I'm a clinical child psychologist with 14 years of experience treating childhood trauma. I have a PhD from the University of Pennsylvania. I've published 11 peer-reviewed articles on trauma-informed care. I've trained hundreds of therapists on how to help children recover from witnessing violence. He paused. On June 18th, I was arrested in my own backyard while hosting my daughter's 6th birthday party. I was handcuffed in front of 15 children because a neighbor I'd never spoken to in 5 years called 911 to report that a black man didn't look like he belonged in her neighborhood. 8 of my neighbors told the officer I lived there. My wife brought out our IDs, our mortgage, our deed. None of it mattered. I was handcuffed anyway. Another pause. Officer Mitchell had 17 complaints over 9 years, 5 sustained, all involving the same behavior, stopping black residents in affluent neighborhoods and demanding proof they belonged there. 17. And yet he was still on patrol, still carrying a badge, still given the authority to arrest people in their own homes. His voice strengthened. My daughter, Zoe, is 6 years old. She has been in therapy twice a week since June 18th. She has nightmares about police breaking into our house. She won't play in the backyard anymore. She asks if we're going to have to move because the neighbors don't want us here. She asks if the police will come back to hurt me again. He looked directly at the Board of Supervisors. I am a trauma expert. I know exactly what this has done to her. I know that she will carry this memory for the rest of her life. I know that the settlement, $13.8 million, is significant, and I appreciate that Fairfax County took responsibility. But money doesn't undo trauma. Money doesn't give my daughter her sense of safety back. Money doesn't erase the image of her father in handcuffs on her birthday. A long pause. The room was silent. If this can happen to me, a psychologist with a PhD, a homeowner in a $1.2 million house, someone with resources and credentials and 8 white neighbors willing to testify, what happens to black people without those resources? What happens to renters, to people in working-class neighborhoods, to people who don't have lawyers and cameras and viral videos? The Board of Supervisors had no answer. Should racially motivated 911 calls trigger automatic civil penalties for the caller? Drop your answer. This wasn't just about one arrest at one birthday party. This was about a police department that allowed Officer Shane Mitchell to accumulate 17 complaints over 9 years, 5 of them sustained, all of them involving racial profiling, without removing him from patrol. This was about a system that treated each complaint in isolation, never connecting the dots, never acknowledging the pattern. Mitchell's record told a story his supervisors ignored for nearly a decade. 17 complaints, 5 sustained. Every single one involved a black resident in an affluent neighborhood being stopped, questioned, detained, or arrested for existing in spaces where Mitchell's biased mind said they didn't belong. A federal judge detained outside his own home. A teenager stopped for walking. A cardiologist accused of casing homes. A software engineer handcuffed for loading groceries. And finally, a child psychologist arrested at his daughter's birthday party. The pattern was undeniable. The documentation was extensive, but Fairfax County treated each incident separately, filed them away with mandatory training that Mitchell attended but never internalized, and sent him back to patrol, where he continued to terrorize black residents who had every right to be exactly where they were. Shane Mitchell's career is over. That's justice. Fairfax County paid $13.8 million. That's accountability. Eleanor Pritchard paid $425,000 for making a racially motivated false report. That's consequences. But money doesn't undo what Zoe Hayes saw. It doesn't erase her nightmares. It doesn't restore the sense of safety she had before she watched her father get handcuffed on her birthday. Settlements punish governments and taxpayers. Terminations end careers. But they don't heal 6-year-olds who now associate police with violence against their parents. The real question is, what changes now? Does Fairfax County finally remove officers after 5 sustained complaints instead of letting them reach 17? Do police departments nationwide finally connect the dots when officers show clear patterns of discriminatory conduct? Do neighbors finally examine their own biases before calling 911 on black people who make them uncomfortable simply by existing? Because if we don't fix the system that kept Mitchell on patrol for 9 years, despite overwhelming evidence of racial profiling, if we don't address the culture that convinced Eleanor Pritchard that a black man in khaki shorts setting up a bounce house was suspicious, then we're just waiting for the next officer, the next neighbor, the next traumatized child who watches a parent arrested for being black in their own home. Comment if you believe this should be law. Police departments must automatically terminate officers after 5 sustained complaints involving civil rights violations or racial profiling, regardless of retraining completion. And callers who make racially motivated, false police reports face mandatory civil penalties and restitution to victims. And if you think these stories need to be told, if you believe accountability starts with awareness and change starts with pressure, then hit that subscribe button. We're not stopping. We're going to keep exposing these patterns. We're going to keep demanding better. We're going to keep fighting for the trauma experts, the homeowners, the children who deserve to celebrate birthdays, without watching their parents get handcuffed. This isn't just about one officer or one traumatized child. It's about all of us and the world we choose to accept. It's about whether we're willing to tolerate a system that lets officers accumulate 17 complaints before finally facing consequences. It's about whether we're okay with 6-year-olds learning that badges and guns matter more than truth, safety, or justice. Marcus Hayes dedicated his career to healing children traumatized by violence. And then the system he'd spent years studying created that exact trauma in his own daughter. That's not irony. That's systemic failure. And it will keep happening until we decide it won't.